fun one. Here we go.
Wonderful. And hello, welcome everybody. We are here this morning with Sean and Dale from TransCen. We'll get you some more information on them in a second. We are here to talk about basically this new work-based learning opportunity we have with Texas A&M and Workforce Commission. We are excited because it is a newer project that we are working on, but something that will have lots of wonderful opportunities for our students throughout Texas. If you could advance the slide, give you an idea of my name is Dr. Jacqueline Turner, and I am here with my colleague, Dr. Eric Roberts, and we are here basically to be a support for you all as we learn more about the work-based learning project and how we can support you all now and as you work through your application, and then finally when you all submit and what that looks like afterwards. And if you could,
can you start the poll? I don't.
Oh, perfect.
Option for some reason.
Before we start, we have a quick question. I'm going to launch a poll, and we are asking to please let us know your role with transition and or work-based learning in your current role. We want to just get an idea of who all is here and how we can see supporting you all in the near future as well. I'll give you all a few moments, and we probably have some people joining us, you know, in the process. I don't know how long y'all want to leave that poll open. So we have a lot of transition coordinators and specialists, some admins, which is wonderful. We need admin support, teachers, Texas Workforce Commission's here. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'll leave that poll open just a little bit longer. Eric, let me know when you want me to close that.
Okay. And I can't, for some reason, I can't see it. I guess my Zoom updated to limit the things I can see and do. I don't know.
Oh,
no. That's fun.
As we move through this, please know that we will be monitoring the chat box. You are welcome to message us in the chat, and we will have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. So please know that if something comes up, you have a question, either hold on to that for a minute, or you can message either Eric or I in the chat box, and we will make sure that your question is answered. Okay, can we move on to the next slide, and then we have an interesting dilemma that poor Eric can't see the poll. In general, to give you all an idea of what the project is about that we are talking about today, it's the TAMU Work-Based Learning Project. Basically, it is a project to support work experiences for students with disabilities at the school level, but also moving beyond that. It is a competitive application that we have up to $10,000 per application, and that will include, and as you know, as acceptance happens and as we move through the projects, part of that $10,000 will include support, or I can say in addition to the $10,000, you will have support from both Eric and I and our center with the Center on Disability and Development, as well as TransCen, who is here with us today. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, it's not just, you know, a $1,000 grant, or, you know, we are talking about a full $10,000 or anything if you need a smaller amount than that for ideas you may have in mind. We also know, can we move on to the next slide, please? The focus of this of the projects is definitely to have work-based learning experiences. We are talking about authentic work environments for students with disabilities, and we will talk about what that's going to look like and how that should look like. And so to kick it off, I guess Eric will introduce Sean and Dale, and we'll go from there.
Yep, awesome, thank you. Yeah, I mean, just to throw a little bit more on, because we were really excited about this program. You know, I mean, it's something that really the whole basis behind it, you know, this is all stuff that Jackie said, but for some reason I can't not talk, is that, you know, we're really, you know, work-based learning is something that you know, has a lot of research backing, which Sean and Dale will go over, and you know, and getting students with disabilities jobs. And we're really excited to have this program because that's all this is. This is just trying to help schools create models, you know, to, you know, if they don't have one, you know, develop one. If you're wanting to improve it, improve it. If you want to add more, and just kind of get to the point where, all over the state, we have a lot of really great work-based learning models. This is a multi-year program. It's not just here and gone, and so we're here to support you. We're partnering, you see here with TransCen to help kind of also, besides having the money there, also being able to provide that technical support. And so that is also why TransCen is here to introduce you and to introduce them. And so TransCen, they'll introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about them, but they are, some of the nationwide leading experts on work-based learning model and getting students with disabilities jobs. And so we're really excited to be partnering with them and to have them here today and to talk about, what work-based learning is, and then kind of help get your minds rolling and how you can kind of develop and work on the ones you have in your campuses, which my brain just caught. Oh yeah, we are with you that already have a lot of experience. And so they're going to help you know how to kind of improve on the models that you already have. I mean, some of you might be just coming in because you're interested, or maybe this is something that works for you, but we're going to primarily kind of focus on the ones that already have them going and how to improve and add to those. And so Dale and Sean, pass it on to you. Thank you.
Okay. Sean, if you don't mind, maybe just introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit more about TransCen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Eric and Jackie, and thank you everyone for having us. My name is Sean Roy. I am with TransCen, a colleague of Dale, and have had the privilege and pleasure of doing work in Texas for a few years, webinar series and on-site work, and I'm really excited to be brought in and talk about how can we help you improve your work-based learning programs. And so, and happy to be working with Dale on this.
Great, thanks, Sean. Yeah, and we both are representing TransCen, which is an organization that's been around for about almost 35 years now. TransCen is an abbreviation of Transition Center, and that's how we got our started, is providing transition services under contract to Montgomery County, which is in the state of Maryland, close to DC. We kind of grew from there. We are focused specifically on employment, both for transition age youth as well as adults with disabilities. Besides providing transition services in Montgomery County, we provide services to adults in that part of the country. We also provide direct services including transition services in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is close to where I live. And we also provide services out on the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so besides providing direct services, we are also involved with research and development, and have had the opportunity to be involved in the last 3 large national transition studies that have been done around the country. And our 3rd division is training and technical assistance, which is what brings us here to working with you today. Next slide. So when it comes to what we're going to do today, Sean and I were really excited about having this opportunity because we are very high on work-based learning. We think that the emphasis on this is the right emphasis. And so you have this opportunity to think about your work, your transition programs, and the role that work-based learning can play in those transition programs. And so this webinar really gives us the opportunity to really talk to you about what we know in terms of evidence, both the literature review, recent studies, and legislation in the area of transition services, really trying to get to what we're going to make the case for, what is optimal transition services. And part of that research has shown that the importance of family involvement, so we're going to touch on that. We're going to go a little deeper into work experiences, why we think they're important, the types of experiences that exist, and what are the characteristics of a quality work experience. I want to give you some ideas of some of the national models that are out there. And all of that is an effort really to help inform your thinking and ideally impact your applications for the type of work-based learning that you would like to set up and the role that you would like these funds that are available to you through Texas A&M when it comes to. So we think you can't look at this application in a vacuum. You can't even look at work-based learning in a vacuum. You have to look at it in the context of your overall transition program. And to do that, we really think it's important to talk about interagency roles and responsibilities. And then we're going to kind of finish up with kind of what we think based on the research and what we know of as the kind of optimal transition services. What are some important characteristics of a successful social enterprise? And we're wanting you to keep all of this information in mind when you go about completing your application. After you submit your application, we would like to then have the opportunity to work with some of you from a technical assistance standpoint, and so we'll talk about that. So getting into the literature review, we're going to just go through a number of different studies that have been done that are, I think, relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. One is that employment of young people with disabilities has increasingly become the gold standard of educational outcomes. So in other words, can you have a transition program and call it success if you don't know what happened after the transition ended? Or in other words, is everything you're doing leading towards employment or post-secondary education for these folks? And so this study really kind of reinforces that this is where things are going. The second study we want to emphasize really talks about children and youth, who's particularly between the ages of 15 and 18 in special education. And then it's a study on rising expectations of those students. And I think that's the product of many years of this emphasis around employment. And the fact that these kids have now had the opportunity for more integration in the school systems. And I think what is the product of that, is that as they integrate more, they start to take on the same expectations of the students that they interact with every day in those schools, who ultimately, we hope, are working their way towards a career after school as well. Next study really kind of just talks about expectations a little bit more, and that the data shows that if there's a high level of unemployment, over 60% amongst people with disabilities, which obviously is significantly higher than the average for kids without disabilities. And there's this frustration around efficacy of our transition programs in terms of lack of coordination. And there is in Sean and ours experience, really a lack of really well-defined desired outcomes of the transition programs. And so we think that notion of a really clear goal for all people involved with the program is really an important discussion that you need to have in advance of what kinds of resources you'd like to have, including this grant. Next study really talks about the two factors predicting better outcomes for folks with disabilities, and that is 2 or more job experiences while in high school and having used self, family, friend networks to find those post-school jobs. So paying attention to the networks that exist around each and every one of these students and thinking about what might happen for them around employment, not only after school, but during their time with you in the school system. And the ability to tap into those networks and to really make meaningful job experiences, not just work experiences, but job experiences available for these kids are our strongest indicators or predictors of a successful transition outcome. And something you should all keep in mind when you're working with your transition programs and even the resources that you'd like to use for this grant. So work experience employment, what is it? It's paid or unpaid, and it's a deliberate preparation, a specific preparation for those that are participating. And in terms of the most frequent substantiated practices as indicated by the studies. So what really it comes down to is how do you define these work experiences and preparing them for the world of work. So he mentioned it earlier, family involvement in this study really made the case that when families were involved, they did see an enhanced student academic achievement. And so the ability to communicate and coordinate with those families and bringing them on as partners in your transition efforts really is seen as best practice and something that you need to consider. And part of our technical assistance, or what is available to you, is assistance in how to more effectively engage families. And I'll also make make the point that my colleague Sean Roy, this is his area of, among other things, but this is his main emphasis and area of expertise, and has tremendous amount to offer in this area in terms of how to more effectively engage families. So please keep that in mind. And so the recent highlights of these studies is the importance of employment training and work experiences while in high school, the roles of families in terms of their expectations of them when they are in school, career awareness, those high school experiences and attending some sort of vocational school were also associated with post-high school employment. And again, strong predictors of success. So now I want to shift from the studies to legislation, both legislation and policy that's been taking place recently, that really also makes the case for the importance of these grants, for the fact that you all are here to participate in this webinar today, and that post-secondary outcomes for youth have the opportunity to improve both the employment outcomes and increased access to and participation in community life and less reliance on federal entitlements. And especially if you look at the WIOA recent legislation, along with what we're seeing just in terms of legislation for schools, this is where we're all being moved towards. And that third bullet, particularly with WIOA, what it's basically saying is they have to go from school into an integrated environment, for which employment is a key part of that. And that's fairly new. And so the opportunity to really transition them from school to a segregated workshop or day program, which makes for a very simple IEP, is no longer a possibility. And so again, the importance of these work experiences become, and work-based learning becomes even more critical. Employment first is at the heart of this, and this is an effort that is taking place across the country. There are now more states that are considered employment first states than there are states that are not. And by adopting this notion of employment first, what we're really saying is that when services are being offered to anybody, whether it be a youth or an adult with a disability, you don't have to opt in to be considered for employment, which was thought to be the case in the past. If somebody or a family wanted employment for their family member, they had to advocate for that, and it was assumed that otherwise. Now it's assumed employment is the first and best option for that person, and you have to opt out of consideration for employment. And that's an important shift. And also what Employment First did is define what a successful employment outcome looks like. It's individualized, it's integrated, it's being on somebody else's payroll, and it's at or above minimum wage. So what does it take to make that happen in terms of these predictors of transition success, successful outcomes? Work experiences early and often. Work is considered both an intervention and a desired outcome. Paid work before school exits. And I want to just spend a minute on that. When a youth, particularly with a disability, where that disability has in many cases been reinforced throughout their school career, when they have the chance to work alongside somebody without a disability and receive remuneration for that work, that experience puts a certain expectation on both themselves and the family. And it's not only an expectation, it's a demonstrated possibility that in fact may be something that they would be able to sustain post high school. In other words, have an ongoing career such as we desire for most anybody who exits the school system. And so just the ability to have that experience or to make that happen on behalf of the students that you support really is not only a clear indicator and predictor of a successful transition outcome, it really changes the expectations and the trajectory for that youth and the perspectives of the family. Connections to ongoing supports is really key to all that, especially for those folks with more significant barriers to employment. And so by putting them in those types of environments, you also have the opportunity to identify what are those supports that are necessary to help them be successful on an ongoing basis post high school. And that information is critical when they're making the transition from school to work. What else does it take? It takes employers. And it takes active involvement of employers. To do work experiences in a vacuum that doesn't include employers is still a work experience, but it's not nearly as effective as when a work experience involves employers and co-workers that person also has to successfully work alongside of. And it also, again, goes further to demonstrate both to the individual youth and the family that this person can engage and participate with employers out in the community, which is also a significant indication of a successful transition program, but also an indication of the potential of those particular students. Again, youth and family empowerment. It's important that the more they understand and can contribute, that to me is the definition of empowerment. And so that they know what their possible roles might be. And so that's why we strongly encourage that to be a component of your work experiences. There's a lot that they can reinforce on behalf of that family member when they're with them at home. If they know exactly what you're trying to accomplish and can help that youth be successful. And then all of that is based on heightened expectations. And there's a lot you can do as participants in your transition programs to establish and really help these folks believe in higher expectations for both the youth and expectations of the family in relation to that youth. And that presumption of employability is key to that. And that starts with us all. Do we believe that particularly those folks with more significant barriers to employment have the potential for employability? What's the most important factor for those employers if they are going to be engaged with your transition program? is that they need to have something out of this. And this is an important slide because the approach that we a lot of times see with employers is help the school district out or help these particular kids that we support with a work experience or an employment opportunity. And that what that is, that's selling disability. And a lot what we find over time is the employers that get involved with transition programs because they feel like they're helping out the community, helping out the school district, or helping out individuals with disabilities, it isn't sustainable. Because even though they might be well-intended, it's not necessarily going to lead to competitive integrated employment with those particular employers because they're doing it for a very different reason. But what we do know, and this is another area that we can provide you with technical assistance, is how to have your transition programs be beneficial and be impactful to employers to the point where they want to be involved with your transition programs, not only because it might help somebody else out, but because it can help them out. And how it helps them out is when our transition programs help employers make money, save money, or operate more efficiently. And successful transition programs, particularly ones that have a strong partnership with employers, what's up on the screen is the reasons that those particular employers stay involved with those programs. And that is sustainable. And so that's why we really think it's important that you consider employers in your community when you're considering these work-based learning or work experiences that you're interested in setting up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to go over the next set of slides.
Thank you, Dale. And, you know, as you can see by us taking the approach of going over the literature, you know that we really want to point you towards best practice. And more importantly, we want you to consider what is a clear, connected path to employment look like for a student with a disability, and how can your work-based learning efforts create that clear and connected path to employment. A lot of times we'll see work-based learning programs that are just kind of an uncoordinated set of activities that don't always have a clear goal. So they'll visit the same factory as they visited for the last 25 years, and they'll have kids wiping down tables or shredding stuff. But is that individualized for that particular student? Are those activities creating a clear and connected path to a real job? Not always. And that is evidenced by the unemployment rate for people with significant disabilities, a needle that has not moved significantly in many, many years. And so a lot of these things, the efforts of TWC and others around the country is to really move that needle for students, including those with higher support needs. So when you take a look at your transition services, optimum transition services, you know, what would really additional things that would need to happen to make sure that you're checking all those boxes is something that we've yet to talk about really is student empowerment and how important that is. You know, we are still very used to making decisions and having meetings around people without involving people. And we advocate for a process that as much as possible, it is student-centered. And when we create processes that are student-centered, it's easier then for us to get to that place of individualization. And that individualization concept is one of the hardest things, I believe, for education to achieve. It's the core tenet of a lot of what we say we're supposed to do, but it's hard to do because it takes a lot of time, because you're working with one student out of many. But empowering those youth truly to explore their careers, to explore interests, to build new skills and to have new experiences, you know, to have a fulfilled life. is really a core tenet of optimum transition services. We're going to talk a little bit more about family involvement in the next a slide or two. Pairing academic preparation with work experiences, so they're not really separate, right? They don't have to be separate. You can have math skills paired with work experiences. You can have reading skills and technology skills paired with work experiences. You know, sometimes we still hear of families saying, oh, we want them on more of an academic track than on a work experience track. And it's like, well, they really shouldn't be looking at this like two tracks. We should be looking at this like the end outcome is to make sure that young people are prepared to work. This idea of early connections to post-secondary services, you know, do we really need to wait? If a student is in an 18 to 21 program, do we really need to wait until they're 19, 20, 21 to begin connecting them to the services? Or can we connect them early and maybe even determine that some services that we thought were going to be needed aren't needed? Because not every student is going to require every service that's out there, but that's a message that we send sometimes, is that if you're a student with a disability, you go here, but not necessarily, right? How can we customize those services too? And you're going to hear us say over and over again, work, 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 early and often. I would also say within the context of your transition program, but also helping families understand what does building skills and working outside of the context of the transition program look like. So what can families do to build those skills and to build responsibilities in ways that a lot of us had it happen with our families in terms of chores, in terms of interacting socially and taking responsibility for certain things. You know, as Eric said in the beginning and Jackie said in the beginning too, if you have any comments or any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat box. You know, we'd love to hear your reactions to some of these things, and we're going to leave a lot of time at the end for questions as you guys think about your applications for this funding. So again, this is just an opportunity for you to get some ground level information to kind of help you along. So where are we seeing transition services go? We are seeing them go, again, as I mentioned, improving those models of linking work-based learning with academic instruction, making sure that they're not two separate things. Continuing with the idea of collaborative transition models. We're going to share with you some national models later, and what they all have in common is this idea of collaboration. And I might even go as far as to say, you can't have quality work-based learning without quality community collaborations and collaborations with your partners. I don't know if a school can do it by themselves. You have to have collaborations. Employer-led initiatives is another model we're going to talk about a little bit later. But, you know, this idea that, you know, employers recognize that there are workforce needs, very significant workforce needs, and that they can partner with schools to be able to prepare a whole group of employees to be able to meet those workforce needs. And something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and something that we don't talk about very often, is this idea of advanced training for transition professionals. I was talking with Eric and Jackie yesterday, and I said I'd be willing to guess in your pre-service training, right? So not Eric and Jackie's, but the folks that are on the webinar today, on your pre-service training, when you were in your special ed programs or whatever it was it might have been, you probably got very limited information about transition. You probably got very limited information about facilitating work experiences in an individualized way or a customized way, and very limited information about engaging families or empowering students. And yet that's exactly what we're asking you to do. And therefore, we're in a situation where we're asking people to do something they haven't been trained to do. And that's where this technical assistance comes in. But also, too, I've had the privilege of coming to Texas to the Texas Transition Conference for many years. You guys have great support in your state with the transition project out of Sam Houston. You've got your regions, your education service centers. So you've got great support in that state to be able to say, hey, I need some training on this. We need to help our staff be a little bit better at what's going on. So Dale, as Dale mentioned, my area of focus tends to be family engagement. And I worked at a parent center for many years before coming to TransCen. And I am the sibling of a young adult, or an adult now, none of us are young anymore, with intellectual disabilities. And really, my life experience with my brother is really what brings me to this work and what brings me to working with families. And I think it is another key component of what it is that we're talking about. In particular, knowing that if you work effectively with families, you are going to have a better time with your work-based learning opportunities, because families are the gatekeepers for their students. And if they don't believe employment is possible, they're not always going to let you do what it is that you need to do to facilitate those work experiences. And so one of the key things is raising expectations. When you have a child with a disability, you're not exactly inundated with positive messages about what life is going to look like for your son or daughter. And so we come in, folks like us, all of us, and say, oh, they're going to have a job in the community. They're going to be able to take public transportation. They're going to be able to manage finances. And it's something that's difficult for them to believe. So one of our key missions is to raise those expectations and keep messaging to families. And I'd love to see this happen in elementary school and middle school, not just high school, that work is possible for people with disabilities, right? And that is our common goal. So I said, involve families in a common goal. Make it known that when they come to your transition program, our goal is to prepare them for a real job in the community. And we are going to get them opportunities to practice jobs that they're interested in. Those are the work experiences. Make it very clear to families that transition programs are not just 3 more years of high school. Transition programs have a purpose, and that purpose is to build skills and to connect kids and to help them practice. Utilize their knowledge in the discovery and assessment process. So a lot of times kids don't give us an awful lot in terms of what it is they're interested in doing. But when you sit down with families, and it's something that's part of our technical assistance, you sit down with families, you can get a ton of information that you can use to begin your job development. And you connect them to supports, as Dale said. And this also includes things like benefits planning. Sometimes families who have young people on Social Security benefits, they don't believe that kids can work because they'll lose their benefits, which we know is not the case. But we need to connect them to the resources around guardianship, around benefits planning, around all of these different things so they can make informed decisions. And then, as I mentioned earlier, train your staff. Train staff on how to interact with families appropriately. Through all of this, I hope that you know that our message is work experiences are important. And really, research is pointing towards one of the few things that we know, which is one of the most important predictors of post-school employment success for all youth, including youth with disabilities, is whether or not they achieve some sort of meaningful work experience, paid employment prior to leaving school. And that we're going to go over what we mean by work experiences. But you know, if we know this, if we've done the research and we know that work experiences lead to positive employment outcomes, then there's no reason not to do it. There's no reason not to structure your program around providing individualized community-based work experiences. In fact, it's a must as far as I'm concerned, because that is what we know works. And so that's the direction that we really hope that you take with this opportunity, is that how do you build that capacity within your own district to do that? And we've seen it happen in small districts. We've seen it happen in tiny districts. We've seen it happen in big districts. And it is possible, and it's happening around the country at various places. And this is the direction that we strongly believe in. We know that that it has great benefits to students and youth in terms of work experiences. You know, it contributes to this idea of career development and choice. You know, that they have a choice and they're able to work through some of those things that they want to do. Certainly improves self-esteem and reinforces the things that they've learned in school. It helps them understand the meaning of work and a workplace culture, and And when you go to work, there are certain expectations, and really it helps them start develop valued social roles. This, you know, all of us have employment, and through employment, we have networks. We've got people that we can draw upon. We have friends, we have professional colleagues. And a lot of people with disabilities don't have that social role of being connected to employment. And then also too, the work experiences helps young people understand and their support systems understand what workplace supports they're going to need to be successful. And that means sometimes kids are going to flame out. They're going to flame out of the work experience and it might not work, but you're going to learn something. You're going to go, oh, this is the support that they're going to need when we're going to try this again, right? So work experiences are very important to young people. Now, we know that also too, you know, a lot of you work in transition programs and you've got legal requirements. You've got some compliance issues that you need to worry about in terms of transition. And so we know that work experiences can help you have more meaningful IEPs, right? Special education law requires transition plans that are connected to some key indicators, employment, post-secondary education, independent living. And we know that those key indicators can be improved by work experiences, including indicator 2, which is the dropout indicator, indicator 13, which is the percentage of IEPs that have the measurable goals based on a good assessment process. And indicator 14, which is the percentage of 1 year out of youth that are either enrolled in post-secondary education or employed in some way or both, right? Those are the most important transition indicators that we have, and we know work experiences contributes to that. But we also know WIOA, as Dale mentioned, also now requires VR agencies and schools to really increase their collaboration. There should be a memorandum of understanding. There should, and when we talk about these collaborations, as we mentioned earlier, having TWC at the table is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential, because you have to work together. And VR ends up being such a gatekeeper to a lot of adult services down the path. When we talk about work experiences, really, so you guys signed up for this particular session because you said that you had some established knowledge and some established programs, right? So this is kind of the group of people that said, yeah, we've got some stuff going on. So this type of work experience information shouldn't be new to you. But when we're talking work experiences, we're really talking about what are you going to be able to do to provide students with the opportunity to explore careers that they're interested in and practice. And why is practice important? Because sometimes we all pick things that we end up not really liking. You know, a lot of kids gravitate towards working with animals and want to do something in the vet office, or they gravitate towards video game design. But do you know how tedious it is to sit there and code a video game for days and days and months? And that's not something that a lot of kids thought that was part of it. They thought you'd work in an office with beanbag chairs and a ping pong table and just get to throw ideas around about monsters, and then somebody else is going to do it, and then all of a sudden you're famous because you designed a video game. The opportunity to practice is really what work experiences is about, as far as I'm concerned. So career exploration, visiting the workplaces, interviewing employers and saying, hey, I'm interested in doing this. Tell me what education I need. Tell me what it's like to work here. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Job shadowing. Hey, let me come in and just watch you. I'll be a fly on the wall. I want to see what a day in the life of a video game designer really looks like. Work sampling, which is, you know, this is what this task that this particular job entails. I'm going to try it. I'm also going to learn some soft skills. I'm going to give this a shot, right? I'm going to actually get my hands dirty and figure out what this looks like. Service learning is, I think, underutilized in terms of an opportunity for schools to really make an impact in their community and to connect kids to this idea that work is all for payment, but also work can be for being a citizen. And it's a lot of times it's a condition of graduation if you're part of certain school districts or certain associations. Internships, tend to be a little bit more structured, if they tend to be, I think, a little bit harder to come by. Oftentimes, these are done through post-secondary institutions. They can be paid or unpaid. Apprenticeships we most often equate to the trades, but doesn't necessarily have to be that. But it usually is kind of a formal agreement about a work experience that's extended, right? So you're going to be an apprentice for an electrician or a plumber or something along those lines, and it tends to be paid, right? But they also tend to be very hard for students with disabilities to access due to certain restrictions that I think we still need to work through. Stipend types of jobs where a wage is paid through an external source, maybe an employment program, and they tend to be more customized when we get into this idea of customized employment. And then, of course, the ultimate is paid employment. And we often think, yeah, work experiences are great, but I always talk to families and say there's nothing that's going to stop your son or daughter from just going and applying to get a job. If they want a job, just go get a job at a grocery store. You can still have work experiences at school, right, to explore. But if they just want to go get a job, have them go get a job, right? See how it works out. And so what are some characteristics, though, of quality work experiences? And so I was really taken by one of the studies that Dale noted, talked about the importance of having 2 or more job experiences, right? But I think what happens is that people see that and go, okay, we had them wipe tables in the cafeteria and we had them shred paper in the office. There's your 2 job experiences. We've done what we're supposed to do. And hopefully you're seeing now that it needs to be a bit more robust. We're pointing you towards your clear goals in your program, that work experiences are the expectation, clear expectation of progress towards those goals, and you're relating that progress and the expectation to families. Clear roles and responsibilities for worksite supervisors and support personnel, and this includes training. So right now what WIOA has kind of created is a situation where school staff have become job developers and VR staff have become classroom teachers because of pre-ets. So clarifying roles and responsibilities is important. On the job learning, skill acquisition is really what a work experience should be about. Even if they don't want to be something, if they go through a work experience and say, yeah, this isn't for me, but they've gone through it and they've done the job and they've acquired at least some knowledge, some skill that could be transferable. Sorry about that. So it's a range of opportunities. There are mentors on the work site, and there's good documentation and feedback, right? So right? Were the employers happy with this? Were the youth happy with this? Were the family happy with this? Did it really lead to something? That's what a quality work experience looks like.
Hey, Sean, before you move into the transition models, can you go back to the slide right before the start of the describing of the work experiences? Yeah, okay, so yeah. So when you're, okay, so go one more back. So when you're putting your application together and when you're thinking about your work experiences, keep some of these slides, these resources in mind, and think about making the case for the work experience or the work-based learning that you're proposing in your application. Do one or more of these benefits to students exist with the application and with the design of the work experience that you're planning to put in place? And then go 2 more slides down, Sean. Yeah, in terms of the types of work experiences, you can use several of these types of work experience in the design of your application for these resources and in the design of the work experiences that or work-based learning that you're planning to put in place. You can have elements of career exploration or job shadowing. I think like particularly with social enterprises that you might want to do on site within your schools, those are mostly going to fall in that work sampling category. But there are other elements that you could put in, even if that was one of the ideas that you had in mind. So the next slide, you could have this notion of they do something at the school, but then it's tied to some opportunity to volunteer or do something out into the community. Or you could infuse a notion of an internship or an apprenticeship with what it is they might be doing, even if it is at the school. Go to the next one. So hopefully you get the idea that and stipends, like you can use, and you're going to hear from Eric and Jackie about kind of how you can use these dollars. And it is some sort of combination of purchasing some things and possibly, for example, the possibility of a stipend. So for example, you might be able to work something out with an employer where maybe the first year a stipend is used to pay these students so that the employer has the opportunity to see whether this is beneficial to their business and to their operation. And if in fact, after the stipends being provided, the employer might agree that if we find some benefits to this, we'll be willing to pick up those stipends on behalf of those students. So I'm just trying to give you ideas of what you could do with your grant as it relates to these different types of work experiences and what best practices might look like out there. And then Sean, go to the next slide. And then when you're making your application, and you're writing your proposal, next slide. Think about the quality work experience characteristics. How many of these are in existence or being built into what it is you're proposing around program goals and having consistent goals, role clarification, on-the-job learning? Is there a way to build in some sort of mentorship? So we're hoping that these slides give you ideas in terms of what might be possible in relation to designing work-based learning or designing some work experiences. And then when we go through these models, these are national models around transition, and there's elements of these that you might be able to keep in mind as well when putting your proposal together.
Dale, why don't you just take the models? I mean, I know that you had wanted to chime in anyway. Why don't you just go ahead and walk us through them?
Yeah, so these models are really elements of everything that you saw before in terms of what we've learned to be most effective in the studies, what we've learned in terms of where legislation is going. And these three models really kind of stand out. And the first one is bridges, of which one of the sites, they are in 11 cities around the country, started actually through the Marriott Foundation with TransCen. And TransCen was an early involved in the design of that model and the rolling out of that model in different parts of the country. As a matter of fact, some of the staff that worked in the Bridges programs have then subsequently ended up working for TransCen. And the key elements of it is that it has a strong participation by employers, and it has a strong partnership between the school systems, VR, and the workforce agencies. And so strongly, encourage you to look into that particular model. And their success rates, employment rates are very high. And so it's important to kind of, well, why is that? I think it's mostly based on the level of support and collaboration that exists in that model. And then we're all familiar with Project Search. The really interesting thing about Project Search is you can do Project Search without Project Search. I mean, you can have all the components of that. And so, it is a one-year, fairly well-designed employment preparation program that incorporates learning and education at the employer sites. It's the model that has the strongest participation by employers. And it's one in which employers have consistently said, we're getting something out of this. We're not doing this out of charity. This is benefiting our business. And so those Project Search sites are important. And I know that there's some Project Search folks on this webinar today. And you all really should share kind of what you're doing, how you're doing it, because it is a very successful model. And things that and elements of that you can replicate, particularly as it relates to engaging and partnering with some employers. Maybe there's one or two really strong partners or employers that you have a strong relationship with, that you could talk about the project search model, but with the idea that, we could do something ourselves that's sort of like project search, and you could really play a leadership role in this in a way that's going to give you potential job candidates, interns, and possibly employers moving forward with this type of program. And I think that's the ultimate benefit of the project search model for those employers that participate in it, is immediate access to potential employees who are trained within their own operation and their own way of doing business. And so they can take those folks that are learning and getting training and convert them into actual employees. And their success rate is also very high in terms of the ones that go into that program that end up in some sort of paid employment. And then the last one is this seamless transition model. And this is also something that was initially developed by us at TransCen. And there's some additional literature, and strongly, by the way, we keep referencing The Way to Work. Dr. Lukings, he has a second edition out on that book now. And it's a great resource for you all to consider. It's got a lot of real practical tools, and it really does reinforce this seamless transition model. It can be acquired through Brooks Publishing. And again, gives you a lot of the tools and strategies. So the latter parts of the book really kind of is more pragmatic in terms of you as a school staff, in terms of how to implement some of the seamless transition elements. And it's a very simple goal of the program, that the first day of their adult life after they're exited the school system is the same as their last day in the school system, which means employment is in place, supports are in place. And that's what we think is the ultimate best predictor is of employment, is if they actually have it when they exit the school system. So we would like you to consider, and the work experiences are very individualized. It's based on the assets, the qualities, the aptitudes of those individuals that that you're working with, because that's what the employers are most interested in. They don't need a diagnosis. They don't need to know a significant amount of information about a person's disability. They just want to know where can they make a contribution, and how is it that they can fit in here and fit in here successfully. And again, those work experiences allow both parties, both the employer and the person that you're sending there, the opportunity to see if this is going to be a good fit. And that is one of the primary things that employers say about our transition programs, is we're able to be introduced to these folks, and we may have concerns, we may have preconceived notions about this person based on their disability, and the opportunity to meet them and be with them and to know what it is that they can do in the way of making a contribution changes the trajectory of that relationship. And so all of these models really just try to reinforce that on a systemic basis, but it's something that you can achieve individually or as a program within your own communities as well. Sean, I'd like you also to have a chance, if you do. You want anything else you want to add on any of those models before we move on?
No, I just, I think it's important, the Marriott Bridges is not just a hotel program, just so you guys know, it's a multiple sites, and there's websites. So if you Google Marriott Bridges, there's a whole website with the Marriott Family Foundation. Project Search, of course, has a great website, started there in Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And you Google seamless transition and you'll get all the literature on the seamless transition pieces. So I'm just going to forge ahead in the interest of time. I want to make sure we get to Eric and Jackie too about the specifics of the application, and I'm sure you guys have a ton of questions at this particular point. But one of the key aspects of making work-based learning work is making sure that you've got interagency roles and responsibilities all figured out. You know, Dale and I go into school districts a lot, and we will hear we'll see one partner is just completely absent, and we'll go, oh well, you know, we'll hear, oh well, they don't really, you know, they don't come to any meetings or they don't respond to us, and it's not always, you know, the community employment provider, it's not always voc rehab, but really you have to have a collaboration in place to be able to make this work. Because if you come in with all of these great ideas, but you don't have the capacity to utilize the new strategy, that you don't have the capacity to figure out who's going to fund the work experience, if you don't have the capacity to transport students to places where they can get those individualized work experiences, or to provide on-site work support, it becomes difficult. So there's an administrative side to this. One of the pieces of technical assistance in our menu is helping you kind of create that interagency team, right? So you got to have the team in place and the policies in place to be able to make this work. This is just an example of a tool that we've used called the flow of services, which kind of would help people kind of figure out, right? What do we want to be able to achieve across the age span? And you can add partners to this. It's not just voc rehab, education, CTE, and families. You can add, you know, the IDD employment provider, or, you know, the waivered service employment provider if they exist in your area, or other partners that you may have as well. But I just wanted to give you an example of a way to think about this, because clarifying roles and responsibilities is really going to help smooth that path to the activities being successful. Because you're going to, if you run into a brick wall with people and their own expectations about what is supposed to happen and not supposed to happen, I think it can cause some frustrations. So I'm going to throw it back to Dale for the last few slides, and then we'll throw it back to Eric and Jackie.
So we also wanted to talk about social enterprise characteristics, because we have heard from Jackie and Eric that there's a strong interest amongst you and in relation to these applications for these grants. And so it really just reinforces what we hope, everything that you've heard in our webinar today. And what we're really trying to say is a social enterprise, if it's something that's being owned by the school, there still is a need to really determine what is the impact of that social enterprise. And so these are, and again, another list of things that you could consider when writing and designing your work-based learning or work experiences in your applications is we're looking for, not only does a student develop some additional awareness of their options when it comes to a career, but it's actually documented in terms of what additional awareness they've been able to achieve. Same thing applies with the skills and aptitudes and job tasks that they're able to accomplish successfully. And is there an effort to, or a willingness to try for more and better communication coordination with the student's family? Are you combining this work-based learning with academic instruction? And if so, what are they learning that they're able to reinforce through the work-based learning? What are there links to networks for future job searches, either through that individual youth, their family, or through your programs? You know, what are you doing to network with that larger employer community? Identifying workplace supports, where are they going to come from, who's going to be able to do them? Clear programmatic goals, as well as expectations and feedback based on progress towards those related goals. So we're thinking, you know, if you don't measure it, you don't value it. And so, you know, that's to be able to document and measure how are you moving towards your successful goals as a program, and how are these students moving along what we hope is a fairly well-defined path to employment. We have this, you'll be getting this from, if you apply for the program, you'll be getting a 1 or 2 pager that will in more detail describe the training and TA that's available through us at TransCen. But this is kind of a list. We can provide TA in terms of how to integrate your work-based learning into the other 4 pre-employment transition services that are out there. So we think that there really needs to be some cohesiveness to those pre-ep services, for which we think work-based learning is by far the most important and impactful of the 5 types of services offered. That Sean already described, that we can assist you with building that interagency team. Same thing with strategic planning in terms of how to build that focus, that clear goal that you're all going to be working towards, building that capacity to provide work-based learning. And then if folks need it, additional training and support on how to support those folks to be successful on the job. The last one is an on-site, and it's only potential that we can provide that. There's a lot of cost associated with this, but it's where we actually would come on site and not only provide training, but model the discovery and assessment process, the engaging of the families, and the engaging of those employers. All those key components that we said makes for a really strong transition program. We would come on site for 2 visits in which we would model some of this and work with your staff to develop those skills. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Eric and Jackie to kind of go into the more specifics about the application.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try to be fairly quick. We really want to kind of get in your questions. We really appreciate all the information Dale and Sean provided, and then we want to have a lot of opportunity for questions about this, about models. I mean, we are here for the application and helping, you know, we want to get rid of this money. We want, you know, everyone to have these awesome models. And so we are pushing that, but also if you just come here and you learn, I mean, that how good is that? I mean, that's awesome as well. And so, you know, we're not holding you to it. You have to do this, but just a little bit of knowledge to know like on the process. And so we will review applications at the beginning of each month. And so, you know, I know a lot of us really kind of work off of deadlines. So if you want to give yourself a deadline, you know, say, oh, we have to get this done by the end of the month. And so we can get it in there and they can review it and just kind of know what that's going to look like. And I don't know that this is written here, but what we'll do is, depending on how early you get it in, Jackie and I will probably look at it, and then we might give you some feedback and say, hey, you know, if you might want to improve this and get the kind of, you know, work on this area because, you know, so probably come back to you anyway. So might as well go ahead and work on it now. And then we'll review them. And then some of them right away we'll say, here you go. Awesome. You know, we're going to give you this money. And then others will come back with a question. And no, if we come back to you with a question, it's that we like it and we want to give you this money. We just have to have some clarification in a few areas. And that'll be with, and most of them we're going to want to do that. I mean, we are here to provide the support and these fundings. And so that is what we're here to do. And then Dale brought up a little bit about the money, and I won't get too much into it, but I mean, we're pretty open on what that can look like. I mean, you know, I put in the chat that it could be for training. Like, you know, a lot of times, hey, we're pretty set up, but we really just kind of need training, you know, and this could be paying for training. This could be, hey, paying, you know, if your district allows subs for everyone to be able to attend training. I know oftentimes it's really hard to get everyone out there to trainings, especially our paras who work really directly with this. Why aren't they involved? Let's find a way to help them out, you know, or, you know, just a variety of ways with that. I mean, just about anything and everything, as long as then we can kind of look at this and say, here, how's this going to be sustainable, you know, and we need that. We're not just providing money and then this is going to last until the money's over, you know, but that can look in different ways. And oftentimes we have the school-based enterprises, and so that makes sense, right? Well, we're going to use our profits and that's how we're going to sustain this. But, you know, building relationships with employers, you know, that's another way to make it sustainable. And I know that we have some of these smaller districts out there that, like, you know, we don't really, you know, if we had these relationships, we could be doing these things, but I don't have time to build these relationships. Well, potentially this could be, you know, you have a retired teacher that has some time to build these relationships. The money could go towards that. I mean, be really open towards what you can provide, what this can go to, and know also that, like, before we go to continue on to the questions and all, Jackie and I are here to support through all the process. Like, if you're not quite sure and you want to set a meeting with us, contact us and we'll sit down with you and talk about it. I mean, we want you to have a winning application. We are the reviewers, but we're also the ones that help you support. We're not only the reviewers, there's other reviewers as well, but we're here to help you get that money and get the support and the funding. Like the support, I think we didn't talk about that. So we're looking at 3 tiers, and it's kind of how we try to set up these webinars. We have those that have a lot of experience, those are kind of medium, and then those that really have a lot of ideas, but we just don't really have the foundation. We're thinking those are kind of more those rural districts, and we're going to provide supports to all those, and that's kind of how our concentration will be. Jackie, do you want to just quickly cover the next 6, or do we want to jump to the question?
Sure. So with the application process, we know that if you first take a look at it and open up the application, it can look a little overwhelming. What we want you to know is that once you start thinking through it and putting the pieces together, it's not so overwhelming. What we talked about today with TransCen are some really crucial pieces to it, really thought-provoking, and really getting a plan in place, really to provide access and success for your students, right? And so that's really what it's about. Do you want to go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so there's 6 basic things that we know our applications need. Instead of me reading these for you, I'll just know that you'll have access to the PowerPoint. Like Eric says, know that we are here to support you all and read through something if you're kind of questioning if this is the right way, if you need some more info. Your big 6 are essentially looking at, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. 1, making sure you have a committee in place. Make sure your committee that you're going to be working with isn't too large. It can get really unyieldy. Have some examples there of who can be in your committee. We talked a couple of times, you heard the word, going to the next slide, about sustainability. You want to think of ways that you can sustain your project beyond the 1 or 2 years that you may be getting funding for. Those things don't have to be set in stone. They don't have to be, exact. Just know that what we're looking for is an idea and a plan. We recognize things change a lot. I mean, things have changed so much in the past 2 years that nobody could really expect, and foresee them. So just know that we're also very realistic. Both Eric and I have a background in education. We know and understand that things change all the time. With that said, you have, looking at your model, one of the main things we want to look at is that you do have that community partnership. That is the biggest difference between this grant and this, these funds compared to others, is that we really want to see you collaborate and work with the community and get your students involved and working with the community. So that's going to be a huge part of really having a strong application. You can go to the next slide. You want to make sure that your plan describes and explain how you're going to be using these pre-ed skills, but don't feel that you have to go and really detail all 4 areas. If it doesn't have to be all 4. It could be one area. You could be really working on workplace readiness and not so much on post-secondary opportunities. Don't feel like you have to include all 4 if it's really not the case. You could do one area really well, and that's more important than trying to push and trying to force all 4 areas into your project. Now, you will know that they kind of naturally flow into each other. So just know that you add that information in. The more information you add, the stronger you'll probably notice your application looking anyways. Go on to number 5, please. Really also looking at, and special ed student or educators know this, that progress monitoring is a huge part of really seeing success in your students. So we also just want to see a plan that you're going to be evaluating students, evaluating their progress, and understanding that those things will also change also. We have some examples here of what that might look like. And again, you might have other things that you do that you work well, that you've seen happening in your school or in your district that you want to utilize. Just add those in, and of course, it'll help you have a better plan. And then finally, This is one that can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be, this beautiful graph and this beautiful, artwork like this. Really just have an outline of a timeline, right? So like you know that this is going to happen. Take into account, the natural flow of the school year. We know that things really get crazy in the fall, right in November to December. We know that things really start picking up quickly in the spring, but then of course spring break, all those kind of things that naturally happen in the school year. Take all those things into account. And just know that we're looking for like a reasonable timeline, right? A logical process. Don't put it on the timeline that you're going to get your funds, November 2021, and you're going to start, because we know that's not going to happen. You're going to have some time. You need some time kind of protected to get your funds, figure out how you're going to do everything. And so just know that that's what we're looking for. Also, we're not also going to come back and say, well, you said that in February 2022, you were going to spend $2,000 on this and that didn't happen. Please know that that's not what this is about. This is very much about just having a plan in place and recognizing that those funds will be utilized more or less in the way that we had hoped for. That's what Eric and I are here for. That's what we'll be doing with the next year or two anyways. And that's where Sean and Dale are here for also, is just to help us, help you recognize that, funds are better here than here. And just know that that's what we're looking for, not necessarily, a contract that we're going to sign with blood and this is how it has to look. That's not what we're interested in at all. Okay, those are thank you.
Yeah, and so this is kind of where we're going to start doing some questions. So if you want to put it in the chat, if you want to mute yourself, also Jackie, if you want to put up our poll. But yeah, in the application, the last poll, should we say ending poll or something? I think
I have it up already and survey that's right, you can't see it. Yeah, it's up there. If y'all wouldn't mind, we just want to have an idea of who is interested, who we need to kind of look out for. Please, like Eric said, we do review the first of every month, but if November 1st is like right tomorrow, it feels like, if that cannot happen, just know that we'll review in December, right? It's really okay. This is a work in progress and we will be reviewing on a continuous manner. So just know that if you want to, reach out for some, clarifying questions, we're here for you. But if you're ready to rock and roll and send that out, tomorrow, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yeah. I'll try to be a little quiet. You can interrupt me, but just thinking of the application, I know it can be overwhelming, but we're also, I think of it in the similar terms of like a transition plan, right? We put transition plans to put, and we try to put as much as we want as possible in there and make it as robust as possible.
Oh no. So what he's saying is that we all recognize that those kind of transition plans and IEPs, although you can put all the work in the front end, those things do change throughout, in the process. Is he back? I see he's trying to come back. Okay. Let's see. Let's go ahead and look at some questions. What kind of enterprises are districts using this money to support? We have seen a number of different things. First of all, no, this is a relatively new project and grant. So we haven't really seen a lot confirmed yet. We're in the process of reviewing our first batch. We are seeing a number of those enterprises. We're looking at applications like, the dog biscuits and the coffee carts and things like that. Really those enterprises that you'll have started seeing kind of popping up in schools. The difference is that we want to see how those are going to be pushed out more into the community and how that's going to be used to collaborate with your different resources across Texas. The other thing to consider is that we are completely and totally aware that every district has different needs and different resources. I'm personally from South Texas. I know the McAllen area applications might look completely different than, one of something from inner city Houston that is maybe even has the same idea of what the enterprise might be, but those the steps and the plans might look a little different. So just know that we are completely aware that's going to happen as well. Let me see, did Eric come back in? I feel like he's okay. Is this just for school enterprises, or could the funds be used to set up a project search site, for example? Yes, it could. There are, right now we are seeing very few limitations of what this money can be used for. So we want to be able to get that money out there into your hands to be able to use as we can. So absolutely, if you want to set up something similar to Project Search, we can support you in doing that as well. It's funny that Eric is actually like 2 doors down from me at the office, and hold on a second. You want,
Yeah.
you want to sit down?
Sure.
Hey.
Now Jackie.
Yeah. We're going through some of the questions.
Okay.
And you
Go.
can see the chat up there.
Okay.
So it's just school enterprises, and then
Sorry.
the district is, no, go ahead, do Jared. If your district is already working with Texas Workforce Solutions for pre-ETS workshops for secondary students, would that conflict with the grant?
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, and we can, if you've received we did our past grant, which was the with a capacity building. If you receive that, I mean, you can receive this as well. That doesn't disqualify you. I mean, there's really not too much that can disqualify you besides trying to create, like a self-contained program. I mean, that's really just about it. And she was talking about the model for Project Search, and when we know we saw some that have three different programs going, and that's great. And some of y'all that maybe you feel like you're too small for that, or you've outgrown it, or also kind of creating multiple sites. I mean, I think that'd be a really great way for this group to kind of expand, thinking about that, like, hey, we could set this up in different businesses and, make it more student centered, because, maybe where we're at right now doesn't really work for all of our students. It's more particular, but if we could be in these other sites, that would be really helpful. I know, like, not everyone has a college that's available to them, but like if you do, I mean, that's another area to think about. I know, like at A&M, I mean, we're a small town, hospitals are great because there is a lot of different things you can do, but a college is a small town and we have just about anything and everything you could think of. And so, connecting with these other businesses in these other areas, and it would be something that we could help fund, because there is often, there is a starting cost to getting into those schools and being in those businesses, and setting out. A little thrown off by having to run over here, but yeah. Any other questions I'm missing?
To clarify, this could be used to support training for professionals.
Yeah. So like, we could provide support for training. I know that we, training can be a very big part of why we're not doing as well as we are. Not everyone has the training, and then this could pay for either sending people to training, buying training to have someone come in. It could be paid for, like, if your district allows for your having a subs or a way for everyone to be able to attend the training. I know that can be a very difficult thing to manage in districts, and so this could be funds to work towards that. And I think that's a great way to have sustainability. We're all getting trained, and that's helpful. It's very sustainable. Guess I never unfroze, did I? Because I have
No.
the satisfaction survey I'll have to put out in a little bit. Does anybody have any other questions? You want to unmute yourself? Sean or Dale, did y'all think of anything maybe that we've talked about and we haven't covered?
Well, if folks are considering a social enterprise type of a proposal, just consider the possible engaging with the employer community as part of it. So take, coffee carts were mentioned, okay, so you're going to sell coffee at the school. Well, maybe you partner with one of the coffee houses that are part of your community. And so they might work at the coffee cart, but then maybe there's a work experience at the coffee shop or some formal internship maybe that partners with those potential other employers, or maybe that coffee cart goes to other places and it's done in a partnership with the local businesses. So yeah, think creatively in terms of how to engage employers.
Right.
Because that's a path to employment.
Yeah. And this, I mean, in any of these, I mean, it's great. We really want, we want them to lead to employment, right? I mean, that is the ultimate goal of any of these. I know that some of you, if you're just starting off, which that probably not the majority of you here, you know, we kind of building a continuum of services, like we're starting to build these soft skills, and then we're getting into the hard skills, and ultimately we want to, you know, at the end of the day to be, you know, jobs. And how's that going to happen if we're not in the community and we're not partnering up with the businesses? Anyone that has a project search will tell you, you know, I mean, so many of those students end up getting jobs in those businesses because they start to see how the value in the students, you know, and then that's only happening because they have, you know, real partnerships with real responsibilities when they get in there. I know that I helped start a project search at my school, and we, you know, got in, and like, remember day one, we put the students in their internships, and 30 minutes later, they all kind of came back and like, we're done. Like, that's, you know, they didn't really give us enough. And then all of a sudden the light bulb started clicking in these with the managers, like, oh, these people, they can really do a job and they can truly be a benefit to us here. And then, you know, like by the end of that first year, everyone's like raising their hand, like, hey, can we get one? And we want an intern, you know, an intern. And so then it really became, really, after everyone learned the value of our students, you know, it was no longer difficult for them to get those internships. And then, you know, eventually even like the businesses we're changing their policies so that they could hire our students, and finding ways to hire our students because they learn the value in them, value of having them in there. And so that's the you know, you building those partnerships with those businesses is what that's going to lead to, you know, and then they have friends and they're talking to others, and, you know, and it really just kind of starts spreading from there. And so we, you know, the more we can partner with those businesses, the better. And we do know that some of you might just trying to be building those foundations, just trying to build those foundations. And that's great. We're here to help out with that too. But a lot of you are also trying to, how do we get further out there? And that's it. I mean, you know, how building those relationships and getting in those businesses and furthering the opportunities for the students to get those jobs and move directly into jobs. There we go. Thank you. And then you should have our email addresses. And so, yeah, let us know any questions you have. If you want to sit down and you know, and talk with us via Zoom or phone, or just some email questions, you know, we're here for that. And we do that all the time. We truly want to help, and we want to have as many robust programs out there as possible. And I will be sending you a satisfaction survey, since I wasn't able to post it, since somehow 2 doors down, my internet went out where I did here. And so please fill that out. That helps us make sure that we're meeting your needs, and also honestly helps us continue to have funds. So thank you guys so much, and y'all have a great day. And we'll stay here for a little bit longer. If anyone has a question, maybe they weren't comfortable putting out in front of everyone. Look at 2 screens.
Well, it's overwhelming. Just why this one's off. Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Coach Carter, Anita Carter from Samuel High School, and I currently have my the application. I've already started completing it, but
Okay.
I like the things that you guys have said in your PowerPoint, so I'm going to do some revision on it because pretty much, you know, I've covered some things, but with your slide presentation, it provided more clarity of what I needed to put in the application, because I have all of the tools in place as far as the partnerships, but there's a lot of resources that I didn't even think to add in that, because I do deal with bridges, and I didn't even think about, you know, my bridges connection and adding with this. So I'm going to do a little bit revising, and we'll kind of reach out to you all just to see if I'm, you know, just to send you a sample and see if I'm heading in the right direction as far as the application.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. Are you with Dallas ISD then?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I guess, are y'all all meeting as a group? I mean, it seems, I think several of you were.
We have.
You already have, okay.
In a group. Okay, now we do have another group session on Wednesday for us, our finalization of the contract, of the application. So I will be sending that to our director over transition on Wednesday. But I think I need to do some little revisions before I send it to her. And I kind of, if I could get a look-see from you guys before I send that to her, that would kind of help, with some of the, clarity on it, more clarity on it, and go from there.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and I was just saying it too. I mean, you're go for it and do that. I mean, but like if you are going to meet, I don't know, Wednesday, if we'd be available because we got another one of these going and some other stuff, but it's at some point in you or anybody else, if you're meeting as a group, invite us, maybe that'd be a time we can kind of speak into, what everyone's looking at and their ideas. And we'd love to help in that way.
Okay. I will let her know that. And
Awesome.
So
Great.
thank you. Awesome presentation, awesome information. And I like what you guys are doing. So hopefully, we'll be on board and we can get that grant. So
Well, we're here to give it out. Yeah. Thank you.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So.
All right, anybody else have any other questions? I can move out of the way if you'd rather talk to Jackie. And
No, you're good.
switch spots.
So weird.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all noticed, but she strategically put her A&M cup. She
Don't
does
be
this
like-
every time so that you can see that she I'm not sure she drinks out of it other than she's on a webinar. And then
Stop it.
the survey, I wasn't able to send the survey out because my internet 2 doors down went out, and I'm the one that had it. I should have shared it with her so she should also be able to post it just in case. So I'll email that out. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
They also have 2 more of these, right? That
Yeah, and so we have
similar.
and we have 2 more. We have one tomorrow, which is actually Wednesday, and then on Friday after the Garrett Center has their all day long program that they're doing, and so we'll more or less cover the same stuff if y'all are planning on attending all 3, but we'll just cover it just a little bit different, but it'll be the same slides and essentially the same material. So all right, I mean, unless there's any other questions, I guess we'll go ahead and end.
I was just curious about the poll, but you can't pull it up, right, Eric? Or can you?
No, but I'm on Jackie's, I can share it. So it looks like we have people waiting a little bit.
Only 10% said no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had some, like I said, there was someone that's from Pennsylvania.
state,
Yeah. We Sam from the ESC rep in the San Antonio area shared it on a national website or national Facebook page, and so we got some people that were out of state that attended as well. So let's just assume that's who that was. Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate it, guys, and we're gonna go ahead and end, and y'all have a great day. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.